Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We're so glad you're here to join us for another captivating tale. If you enjoy our stories, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and prepare to embark on a heartwarming yet challenging journey with our brave protagonist. Whiskers was not a cat built for the wild. His days were a symphony of sunbeams on soft rugs, the rhythmic purr of a well-fed belly, and the gentle caress of human hands. He was a creature of comfort, a connoisseur of canned tuna, and a connoisseur of naps. His fur, a pristine white with delicate ginger patches, was always impeccably groomed, a testament to his pampered existence. The thought of a muddy paw, a tangled whisker, or a hungry moment was as foreign to him as the concept of space travel. His world revolved around the familiar four walls of the Miller family home, a sanctuary of warmth, food, and endless affection. But fate, as it often does, had a different plan for Whiskers. It began subtly, with the unusual scent of pine and damp earth wafting into his pristine world. The Miller family, avid campers, had decided on a weekend getaway, a return to nature adventure. Whiskers, being an integral part of the family, was brought along, albeit reluctantly. He'd never been outside the confines of their garden, and the vast open expanse of the forest was an alien, terrifying landscape. The journey itself was a blur of strange smells and unsettling movements in his carrier. Upon arrival at the campsite, a bustling hub of tents, campfires, and unfamiliar voices, Whiskers was overwhelmed. The cacophony of rustling leaves, chirping crickets, and distant animal calls was a stark contrast to the quiet hum of the refrigerator he was accustomed to. He huddled deeper into his carrier, wishing for the familiar scent of his blanket and the comforting presence of his human Lily. The accident was swift and unassuming. While the Millers were busy setting up their tent, distracted by a stubborn pole and a tangled guy line, Whiskers, emboldened by a fleeting moment of curiosity, decided to explore. A flash of a vibrant blue butterfly, dancing tantalizingly just beyond the tent flap, proved irresistible. With a playful pounce, he was out, chasing the fleeting beauty into the dense undergrowth. The butterfly, a whimsical temptress, led him deeper and deeper, its bright wings a beacon in the dappled light of the forest. Whiskers, lost in the thrill of the chase, didn't notice how far he'd strayed, how the familiar sounds of the campsite had faded into a distant murmur. When the butterfly finally vanished into the canopy, Whiskers found himself alone. The silence that descended was not peaceful. It was deafening, a heavy blanket of unfamiliarity. Panic, a cold, sharp claw, began to scratch at his tiny heart. He spun in circles, his green eyes wide with terror, searching for any sign of the orange tent, the red cooler, the comforting scent of Lily. But there was nothing but towering trees, thick bushes, and the overwhelming smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The sun, once a warm companion, began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple that offered no comfort. As darkness crept in, the forest transformed. Every rustle of leaves became a lurking predator, every snapped twig a giant beast. The chirping crickets, once a mere background noise, now sounded like mocking whispers. Whiskers, utterly lost and terrified, instinctively sought shelter. He darted under the nearest bush, its thorny branches offering meager protection but a desperate sense of concealment. The cold seeped into his bones, and the ground, once a soft carpet of pine needles, felt hard and unforgiving. Hunger, a sensation he'd rarely known, gnawed at his stomach. He was no longer a pampered house cat. He was a tiny, vulnerable creature, alone in a vast, indifferent wilderness. The first night was a torturous eternity. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified into a monstrous roar. He curled into the tightest ball he could manage, his small body trembling not just from the cold, but from an overwhelming primal fear. The sweet scent of his home, the soft purr of his human, the warmth of his favorite sunbeam, they were all distant, fading memories. He was Whiskers, the lost cat, and his journey into the unknown had just begun. A journey that would test every fiber of his being, a journey of survival in a world he was never meant to inhabit. The dawn, when it finally arrived, offered little solace. The morning mist clung to the trees like a shroud, and the air was crisp, biting. Whiskers uncurled from his thorny refuge, his small body stiff and aching. His stomach rumbled with a hunger more profound than any he had ever known. The delicate scent of salmon pate seemed like a cruel, distant dream. This was a new reality, one where food wasn't magically refilled in a bowl, but had to be found, hunted, or scavenged. His instincts, long dormant under layers of domesticity, began to stir, albeit weakly. His keen sense of smell, usually reserved for sniffing out a dropped crumb or a new toy, now registered the earthy tang of mushrooms, the dampness of fallen leaves, and the faint, tantalizing scent of something small and alive. He crept forward, low to the ground, every muscle tense. He spotted a beetle scuttling across a patch of moss. In his old life, he would have batted it playfully, perhaps even let it crawl on his paw. Now it looked like sustenance. With a clumsy, unpracticed pounce, he lunged, but the beetle, surprisingly quick, vanished into a crevice. Frustration, a new emotion, rippled through him. This was harder than it looked. His next attempt was more successful. A plump, slow-moving caterpillar, oblivious to its impending doom, crawled along a low-hanging leaf. This time, Whiskers' ancient predatory instincts, passed down through generations of wild felines, kicked in. He stalked, he waited, and then, with a swift, decisive movement, he had it. The taste was alien, earthy, and not at all like salmon, but it was food. It filled a tiny part of the gnawing emptiness in his belly, a small victory in a world of overwhelming challenges. As the day wore on, Whiskers' foraging skills slowly improved. He learned to distinguish the rustle of a mouse from the whisper of the wind. He discovered that certain berries were edible, though tart, and that clear streams offered refreshing water. Every discovery was a small triumph, a testament to his burgeoning survival instincts. But the wilderness was not just about food and water. It was also about danger. The forest was teeming with life, much of it larger and more formidable than a lost house cat. He heard the distant howl of a coyote, a sound that sent shivers down his spine and made his fur bristle. He saw the fleeting shadow of a hawk circling overhead, its sharp eyes scanning the forest floor for prey. These encounters, even from a distance, instilled a deep, primal fear, a constant reminder of his vulnerability. One afternoon, while cautiously exploring a dense thicket, he stumbled upon a badger. The badger, a stocky, powerful creature with formidable claws, let out a guttural growl that stopped Whiskers dead in his tracks. Its eyes, small and beady, fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. Whiskers froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knew instinctively that this was not an animal to be trifled with. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to run, but his paws seemed rooted to the spot. The badger took a step forward, its snout twitching. Whiskers, mustering every ounce of courage, let out a pathetic, shaky hiss. It was more a plea than a threat, but to his surprise, the badger paused. After a long, tense moment, it snorted, turned, and ambled away, disappearing into the undergrowth as quickly as it had appeared. Whiskers remained frozen for several minutes, trembling, before finally forcing himself to move. The encounter was a harsh lesson. The forest was beautiful, but it was also brutal. Survival was a continuous dance between finding sustenance and avoiding becoming it. He was learning, slowly, painfully, that the soft paws of the house cat could indeed navigate the rough terrain of the wild. Each day brought new challenges, new fears, and new, hard-won lessons. His pristine fur was now matted with burrs and dirt, his delicate paws calloused. But there was a new glint in his eyes, a spark of resilience, a fierce determination to survive. He was no longer just Whiskers, the pampered cat. He was Whiskers, the survivor, forging his own path in the vast, indifferent wilderness. The days bled into weeks, each one a testament to Whiskers' evolving resilience. His body, once soft and round, had become lean and muscled. His movements were no longer hesitant but fluid, stealthy. He knew the best places to find water, the most fruitful patches of berries, and the hidden paths that offered the quickest escape from danger. He had become a part of the forest, no longer an intruder but a quiet, watchful inhabitant. Yet, despite his growing prowess, a profound loneliness gnawed at him. He missed the gentle touch of a human hand, the warmth of a lap, the comforting sound of Lily's voice. The forest, while providing sustenance, offered no companionship, no solace. One afternoon, while sheltering from a sudden downpour beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, Whiskers spotted a flash of movement. A small, rust-colored creature with a bushy tail darted from behind the trunk. It was a red squirrel, its tiny paws clutching a freshly picked acorn. Normally, Whiskers would have seen it as potential prey, but something about its quick, almost playful movements intrigued him. The squirrel, seemingly unafraid, chattered at him, its bright eyes curious. It dropped the acorn, nudged it towards Whiskers with its nose, and then scampered up the tree, pausing on a low branch to watch. Whiskers, bewildered, looked at the acorn. It wasn't meat, but it was food. He cautiously approached it, sniffed, and then, remembering the many times Lily had offered him strange, new treats, he tentatively nibbled. It was hard, but surprisingly palatable. The squirrel chattered again, a soft, encouraging sound. From that day on, a strange, unspoken truce formed between Whiskers and the red squirrel he came to know as Nutkin. Nutkin would often appear during Whiskers' solitary foraging trips, sometimes dropping a nut or a berry near him, other times simply chattering from a safe distance. It wasn't friendship in the human sense, but it was a connection, a small, unexpected comfort in the vast, indifferent wilderness. Nutkin's presence, however fleeting, eased the gnawing loneliness, a reminder that he was not entirely alone. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of deep indigo, Whiskers found himself at the edge of a small clearing. The air was still, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Suddenly, a low hoot echoed through the trees, a sound that was both majestic and slightly eerie. Whiskers looked up, his eyes scanning the darkening canopy. Perched on a high branch of a towering spruce, silhouetted against the pale moon, was a magnificent great horned owl. Its eyes, large and unblinking, seemed to pierce the darkness, fixing on Whiskers with an unnerving intensity. The owl remained motionless, a silent, watchful sentinel. Whiskers, despite his fear, felt a strange pull, a sense of ancient wisdom emanating from the majestic bird. He didn't feel threatened, not truly. It was as if the owl was observing him, understanding his plight, perhaps even offering a silent, unspoken guidance. He sat for a long time, simply gazing at the owl, a profound sense of calm settling over him. The owl did not move, did not hoot again. It was just there, a powerful, silent presence in the deepening night. Whiskers felt a strange comfort in its unblinking gaze, a sense that he was being watched over, not by a predator, but by a guardian. When the owl finally spread its massive wings and soared silently into the night, Whiskers felt a pang of something akin to loss. But he also felt a renewed sense of purpose. The forest was not just a place of danger. It was also a place of unexpected connections, of silent wisdom, and of a strange, wild beauty. He was learning to navigate its complexities, not just physically, but emotionally. These encounters with the playful squirrel and the watchful owl were brief respites, small moments of grace in his otherwise arduous journey. They reminded him that even in the heart of the wilderness, amidst the struggle for survival, there could be moments of connection, moments that nurtured his spirit as much as food nurtured his body. He was no longer just surviving. He was adapting, evolving, and finding his place, however temporary, in the grand tapestry of the wild. As the vibrant greens of summer began to fade, a chill crept into the forest air. The leaves, once a lush canopy, now turned to fiery reds and golds, eventually crisping and falling to blanket the forest floor. The days grew shorter, the nights longer and colder. Whiskers, who had adapted so well to the demands of summer survival, now faced his greatest challenge yet, the impending winter. Food, once relatively abundant, became scarce. The plump mice and voles were burrowing deeper, the last of the berries had shriveled, and the insects had vanished. The streams, once flowing freely, now developed thin, icy edges. Whiskers felt the gnawing ache of hunger more acutely than ever before. His fur, though thick, offered little protection against the biting winds that whistled through the bare branches. He shivered constantly, his small body perpetually cold. He remembered the warmth of the miller's fireplace, the soft blankets, the gentle hum of the furnace, memories that now seemed impossibly distant, almost fantastical. Survival in the cold meant finding adequate shelter, a place that could shield him from the elements and perhaps offer a modicum of warmth. He searched tirelessly, his senses heightened by desperation. He investigated hollow logs, crevices in rocks, and the bases of ancient twisted trees. Many were too small, too exposed, or already claimed by other, more formidable creatures. He had a few close calls, narrowly escaping the den of a grumpy fox and the territorial snarls of a badger. One frigid afternoon, a faint scent, different from the usual earthy smells of the forest, caught his attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but distinct, the scent of old wood, slightly damp, and a faint, lingering aroma of something domestic, almost human. Driven by a desperate hope, Whiskers followed the scent, his paws crunching on the brittle fallen leaves. It led him to a small, almost hidden alcove beneath a tangle of roots at the base of a truly massive, ancient redwood. The alcove wasn't a natural cave. It looked like a makeshift shelter, perhaps a very old, forgotten den or a temporary hideaway, used by a small animal or even a human long ago. It was just big enough for him to squeeze into, and crucially, it was relatively dry and shielded from the wind. Inside, the air was still, and while it wasn't warm, it was significantly less cold than the biting air outside. He curled up, pressing himself against the damp earth, trying to conserve every ounce of body heat. He spent much of his time there, venturing out only when the hunger became unbearable. The search for food was a grueling ordeal. He spent hours stalking, often returning with nothing more than a few frozen berries or a half-eaten pinnacone. He learned to conserve energy, moving slowly, deliberately. His dreams were haunted by images of overflowing food bowls and the comforting warmth of a sunbeam. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of hunger, cold, and the constant, relentless search for survival. He witnessed other animals struggling too. A deer, its ribs prominent, moved slowly through the sparse undergrowth. Birds huddled together in the branches, their songs muted by the cold. The forest, once vibrant and bustling, had become quiet, a place of silent endurance. There were moments of despair, moments when he simply wanted to give up, to lie down and let the cold take him. But then a flicker of an image, Lily's smiling face, the warmth of her hand, would ignite a spark of determination within him. He was not just surviving for himself. He was surviving to get back to them, to his family, to his home. The wilderness was testing him, pushing him to his absolute limits, but in doing so, it was also forging him into something new, something stronger. He was no longer the pampered pet, but a creature of instinct and fierce while utterly alone. yet profoundly resolute in his quest to see another sunrise, to endure another night, to find his way back to the life he had lost. The snow came, at first in delicate flurries, then in a relentless silent descent that blanketed the forest in a pristine yet unforgiving white. The world transformed into a landscape of stark beauty and brutal cold. Whiskers' makeshift shelter, while providing some reprieve from the wind, was no match for the deep freeze that set in. His water sources froze solid, and the meager animal tracks he once followed were now buried beneath layers of snow. Hunger became a constant, dull ache, a companion that never left him. He was a ghost in the snow, a small, ginger and white shadow moving through a world designed to test the very limits of endurance. His paws, though toughened, ached with the cold, and his whiskers, once so sensitive, seemed to sting with every gust of wind. He learned to hunt in the snow, a skill he'd never imagined needing. He dug through drifts, his nose twitching, searching for the faint scent of burrowing rodents. He became an expert at silent stalking, his movements precise, conserving every calorie. He discovered that some birds, desperate for food, would venture lower, providing a fleeting opportunity. He was a survivor, honed by the harsh realities of the wilderness. One morning, after a particularly brutal night, Whiskers, weak but determined, ventured out. The sun, a pale disk in the sky, offered little warmth. He was searching for anything, a stray seed, a frozen insect, anything to quell the gnawing hunger. As he navigated a particularly dense patch of snow-laden pines, a strange metallic scent, unlike anything he had encountered in the wild, reached his nostrils. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it held a hint of something familiar, something human. Curiosity, a powerful force even in his weakened state, propelled him forward. He pushed through a thicket of snow-covered bush, his body aching with effort, and then he saw it. Not a house, not a campsite, but a faint, almost overgrown path. It was barely visible beneath the snow, but its straightness, its deliberate cut through the trees, was undeniably man-made. And along the path, partially buried in a snowdrift, was a small, bright red object. He cautiously approached it, his tail twitching. It was a child's mitten made of knitted yarn, slightly worn, but unmistakably a human artifact. He sniffed it, and a wave of memories washed over him. Lily's small hands, her laughter, the scent of her fabric softener. Hope, a fragile, almost forgotten emotion, bloomed in his chest. It was a sign, a tangible link to the world he had lost. This path, this mitten, they meant humans were nearby, or at least had been. It was a direction, a potential way out of this frozen purgatory. The discovery infused him with a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just wandering. He had a destination. The mitten became his beacon, a symbol of the world he yearned to return to. He followed the faint path, his steps more resolute despite his exhaustion. He knew the journey would still be long, filled with unknown dangers, but the despair that had threatened to consume him was replaced by a fierce, burning hope. He moved through the snow-covered landscape, a tiny speck of ginger and white against the vast, silent wilderness. His body was weary, his hunger relentless, but his spirit, fueled by the scent of a lost mitten and the promise of home, was unbroken. He was a testament to the indomitable will of a creature determined to survive, to endure, and ultimately to find his way back to the warmth and love he remembered so vividly. The wilderness had tried to break him, but it had only forged him stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever before. The path, though faint and often obscured by snowdrifts, became Whiskers' singular focus. He followed it with unwavering determination, his small paws pushing through the icy crust, his eyes constantly scanning for more signs of human presence. Days blurred into a relentless trek. He scavenged what little food he could find, frozen berries, the occasional desperate bird, or a small, winter-dormant insect. His body was a machine of survival, fueled by the powerful engine of hope. He was thinner now, his fur matted and dull, but his eyes held a fierce, unyielding light. The forest gradually began to change. The dense, ancient pines gave way to younger, more scattered trees. The ground, though still covered in snow, felt less wild, and the faint scent of wood smoke occasionally drifted on the cold air, a tantalizing promise. One afternoon, as the sun began its descent, painting the western sky in fiery oranges and purples, Whiskers heard it. A faint, rhythmic hum, unlike any sound of the wilderness. It grew louder, more distinct, until he recognized it, the distant rumble of a car engine. His heart leaped, a frantic drum in his chest. He broke into a weary trot, following the sound, his last reserves of energy propelling him forward. He pushed through a final thicket of icy branches and emerged onto a narrow, snow-covered road. It was a minor, unpaved track, but it was undeniably a human creation. He stood at the edge, trembling, his senses overwhelmed by the new smells, gasoline, exhaust, and the faint, sweet scent of human habitation. As he hesitated, a vehicle approached slowly. It was an old pickup truck, its headlights cutting through the dimming light. Whiskers, remembering the dangers of the road from his old life, instinctively darted into the deeper snow at the side, seeking cover. The truck rumbled past, splashing slush, and he watched it disappear into the distance, a wave of disappointment washing over him. He was so close, yet still so alone. Just as despair threatened to consume him again, the truck stopped a short distance down the road. The driver, an elderly man with a kind face, stepped out. He hadn't seen Whiskers, but he was checking something on his truck. Whiskers, emboldened by a sudden, desperate surge of courage, decided to take a chance. He let out a tentative, reedy meow, a sound that was barely a whisper. The man paused, his head cocked. Whiskers meowed again, a little louder this time, his voice hoarse from disuse. The man turned, his eyes scanning the snow-covered forest edge, and then he saw him. A small, bedraggled cat, shivering, but with eyes that pleaded for help. The man, a lifelong lover of animals, approached cautiously, speaking in soft, gentle tones. "Well, hello there, little one. What are you doing all the way out here?" Whiskers, wary but desperate, allowed the man to slowly approach. He sniffed the outstretched hand, recognizing the scent of kindness. He rubbed against the man's leg, a purr, rusty and weak, rumbling in his throat. The man carefully scooped him up, tucking him into his warm coat. The warmth was overwhelming, a sensation he hadn't felt in months. He purred louder, burrowing into the soft fabric. The man, a local forest ranger named Arthur, drove Whiskers to his small cabin. He gave him warm milk and a bowl of tuna, which Whiskers devoured ravenously. Arthur noticed the distinctive ginger patches and the clean white fur beneath the grime, realizing this was no ordinary stray. He put up flyers in town and posted on local social media groups describing the cat. Meanwhile, miles away, the Miller family had never given up hope. Willie, especially, would often talk about Whiskers, drawing pictures of him, holding on to the belief that he was still out there. When they saw Arthur's post, a photo of a familiar-looking cat with ginger patches, their hearts leaped. It was him. The reunion was tearful and joyous. Willie rushed forward, scooping Whiskers into her arms, burying her face in his fur. He purred, a full, rumbling sound now, rubbing his hat against her cheek. He was home. Whiskers was no longer just a pampered house cat. He carried the scars of his journey, the lean strength in his body, the knowing glint in his eyes. He still loved his sunbeams and tuna, but he now carried a quiet dignity, a testament to his incredible journey of survival. He was Whiskers, the cat who had braved the wilderness and found his way back, forever a symbol of resilience and the enduring power of hope.